Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the 1964 film Witchcraft. This is episode 415. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
But it's Witchcraft.
I've been singing that this
Julia
whole
has been
time.
singing that.
How could you not? How could you not?
And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Howdy. All right. Okay. Witchcraft. This is a film that actually was recommended by none other than Mr. Drew, and I don't think the rest of us had seen it. Witchcraft is a 1964 British horror film directed by Don Sharp and starring Lon Chaney Jr., Jack Hedley, and Jill Dixon. The script is written by Harry Spalding. And it is about how best to put this, a witchy coven that is terrorizing a family in an age-old feud that has been exacerbated by the recent arrival, undigging, whatever, of a
Undigging.
particularly famous
Resurrection, perhaps?
resurrection of a particularly famous witch whose grave has been disturbed by real estate developers. So, and all of this takes place in 1964. So, it's a contemporary witchcraft story, which is very cool, and it's British. So, let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go, Tony, Julia, Drew, and Jason. Tony, briefly, what are your opening thoughts? Witchcraft 1964.
I thought it was pretty interesting film. It's it's got a couple twists that are really cool. I don't know. I think it's a cool addition to our kind of witchcraft retrospective. Cool acting. I don't know. I think it was. Again, we kind of randomly chose it. Like, hey, this would be cool. Why don't we do this? I think Drew brought it up, and I'm glad we're covering it. I think it's back to black and white British horror. I dig it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I really liked the old witch. I think she's really neat. I'm trying to find my character's name. She's Vanessa Whitlock. She was fantastic. The whole cast is really neat. It's beautiful looking. It feels like it's the turn of the century, even though it's 1964, except for when you suddenly go to the in town, I guess, and then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. There's the cars and the clothing. Some of the clothing, of course, is throughout but some of it's just cloaks and witch dresses and whatever. So really spooky, very interesting, very moody and cool. And it's filmed at Oakley Court, where Jason and I stayed at one point.
Yeah,
because we wanted to see it, and it was really cool. So I enjoyed it a lot. Good choice.
yes. Drew, it was a really good choice. We're doing movies about witches. We kind of decided, hey, let each person just bring a film that they recommend. Hopefully, we're going to keep that up through the spooky season. If everybody's got something to bring, and you brought this, so what are your thoughts here?
This movie kind of has something for everybody. Star-crossed lovers, evil gentrification, loads of spooky atmosphere. Great black and white cinematography, really top-notch British acting, voodoo dolls. Sure, you've seen it before, but have you seen it with elderly rhinoceros looking Lon Chaney Jr.? I think not. This is the sort of when we first brought up doing a kind of roundtable of witchy movies. This is more along the lines of what I was thinking is these sort of creaky, spooky, morality plays.
Mhm.
And I first happened across this one a couple of years ago. This is a movie that I actually hadn't seen until my adult life, and I just love it. I think this is a really good unsung gem of a movie, and I really hope more people by talking about it on the podcast, like Practical Magic and The Craft are both fun, but they're both cult classics. They have big followings. They're fun to talk about, but we weren't really shining a light on stuff that the horror community doesn't already love. This is a movie that I hope by doing it on our podcast, I hope it will make other people go out and check it out, because I really think that this is a wonderful movie.
That's a fantastic read on this, and I agree. When we started watching this, both of us really just suddenly sat forward, and we were like, "This is I love this kind of movie." There's so many things about this that are exactly what I like. Like setting aside the subject matter, which I think is fantastic. I love the spookiness of it and the resurrected witch and all of that stuff. But stylistically, I love that it's a '60s movie. I love that it's filmed at Oakley Court, which I always love to see. I love seeing British horror films of the Hammer era that isn't involving directly Hammer. Like this director did several movies for Hammer, so you can't in the '60s that it's just one of the studios that you're going to be dealing with. But it's wonderful to see a, a rival to Hammer happening. It also reminded me a lot of some other stylish 1960s movies that we've seen, like Castle of Blood. You remember we watched like a year or two ago, and this reminded me a great deal of that. Just because, especially there are moments in Castle of Blood where there is noise and a party going on just in the other room, and she can't figure out what it is. And I had definite reminders of that. So this movie has a lot going for it. So let's get into it. Like the first topic that I thought would be interesting to touch on. Well, first of all, we should talk a little bit about the cast. And I think it's interesting that the biggest star here is Lon Chaney Jr., who is an American. And his prominence right at the beginning made me at first go, wait, where is this movie supposed to be taking place? Because what's going on is that as it appears at the beginning, Lon Chaney Jr. is the patriarch of a family called the Whitlocks, and he is very, very upset because they still live in a fairly nice house, but they've lost their ancestral mansion, and they are super mad at the Laniers who do have the ancestral mansion that the Whitlocks once had, and they're doing a real estate deal, and they're literally churning up an old graveyard. And Lon Chaney is pissed off about that. But Lon Chaney is this big, giant American. And no explanation is given for why he has an American accent. Like maybe he was gone for a long time or what have you. So I found myself I was lost at first. I was like, I don't understand. Is this movie take place in America or what have you?
Canada.
Canada. Yes.
Well, like the first time I saw this, I kind of had the same reaction, not because of Lon Chaney Jr., because I think Lon Chaney Jr. at this point, like kind of, if you drop him into a horror movie, like I don't ever really quite question his presence so much. But the wife of the hero in this movie is kind of inexplicably made a Canadian tennis star for no reason whatsoever other than they periodically reference it. Like the first time I saw it, I thought that was going to somehow
It's
factor
so
into the plot,
interesting.
and it never does.
I love it when a script throws in a bunch of extra details that have nothing to do with anything. Like, we've been trained, that Shonda Rhimes is famous for saying that if you introduce something, it always has to come back. Like everything is a Chekhov's gun. If somebody says that they've been working on applying 1960s eyeshadow somewhere in that script later, it'll be important to the plot. that they are doing. They're experimenting with 1960s eyeshadow.
Because yeah, it's so frustrating when it doesn't come back, and you're just like, wait, what? Why did
Right.
I
But
have
I
my
kind of like it when you get an overload. If you get something like Buckaroo Banzai, where there are so many references that there's no way in hell all of this stuff is going to come back, and that actually I think can be a lot of fun. So yes, you have Lon Chaney. He is not yet the wreck of a Lon Chaney that you're going to see in the 70s. He's just sort of big and burly and ready for hire Lon Chaney. You quickly realize though what you're dealing with. I think it's funny how this movie, as it introduces its cast, gives us a lot of clues. For instance, the good guys ostensibly are also the much classier wealthy family, the Laniers, who the very first moment, yes, they mention that she's a tennis star, but that also is intended to let us know what kind of activities they do. They play tennis. They are very genteel. They sort of they're sort of fussing around their breakfast and everything.
the
Compared with
grandmother? The grandmother's like 10 years younger than the daughter.
yes,
I
that's
looked them up
another
because I
thing.
was like, this grandmother is only looks older because she's in a wheelchair and has white hair. But if you take the white hair away, I think she might be my age. She was 45
Yeah,
when they made this movie. I was like, oh my gosh,
Damn
yeah,
this march of time.
right. It's just very common for the era where you'll have somebody playing, a grandma and the son, and they'll actually be just like 5 years apart. It just happens. Like I think that in the Hamlet that Olivier did, Hamlet is literally older than Gertrude. I mean, Olivier was
that's
older.
that's what I'm saying. That's the case too. The
Yeah.
grandmother's older. I mean, the grandmother's younger than Helen.
That's astonishing. And yeah, we used to do this a lot more. I don't know why. I mean, Julia, you and I have observed this when we watch a lot of movies from the 50s and 60s, how basically everybody's 45 years old, and it's just some of them have.
I think maybe it's just ages them. They're just like, oh no, we don't hire actors over the
We
age
don't
of
hire 70 somethings.
Well,
No,
I
that
mean,
might
it,
be.
it could be a practicality thing, like making hiring a younger actor and aging them up. They might be able to, like, some of the stuff this grandmother character has to do towards the climax of the movie is pretty physical, including falling down
Well,
Yeah.
but that
several
actor,
flights of
that was a stunt
stairs.
actor. You don't see the face of the actor who falls down the
That's
stairs.
true, but that again though, like my point stands. Like you see something like that in the script, and you go, oh, it might be better to get a middle-aged actor and age him up with makeup, wig, and makeup. But
No, you're
it
you're
is
you're
what it
right.
is.
Like
Sure.
there's
I
another
never
example.
questioned that she was elderly. I like honestly until you brought it up because I feel like the actress sells it. Like
She does good.
she's
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
This is 1964. In 1966, Roddy McDowall was in Lord Loveduck, and in that one, Roddy McDowall, who was 45 years old, plays a high school senior. Plausibly, by the way, he's kind of believable as this smarmy, dangerous high school senior. Harvey Korman plays his nemesis, who is the principal, also 45 years old. It is really wild watching
Well, I
them.
mean, that's why they call it acting too. You're
Right.
pretending to be like I was
Yes.
looking up something about a movie that I was watching earlier where a teenager is played by somebody that's nearly 30 years old, and for
Yeah.
a minute there I was like kind of irritated about it, and I was like, well, it's make believe.
Yeah.
It's not real. Like, the age of the character is the age of the character. They're not saying that that is the age of the actor.
All you
Like,
really need is for the actors to be able to work together plausibly on the screen.
yes.
To not seem mismatched. Although sometimes if actors are mismatched, that can be fun to watch. But yeah, generally speaking, for you to like not think about it anymore, all of the actors playing high school students, if some of them are close to 30, they all need to be around 30. Such as Grease. In Grease, everybody's way too old. It's fine. Like nobody cares. Nobody would toss Rizzo. I'm sorry. I'm blanking right now on,
The
but Stockard
star of
Channing.
practical magic, Stockard
Yes,
Channing.
nobody would toss Stockard Channing out of Grease just because she's not a high school student. So it's fine. So yeah, anyway, this cat the other, so they are 1960s rich people that you're accustomed to seeing like in a James Bond movie
But they
or
kind
any
of
other.
live like, to something that was Julia was saying earlier. They kind of almost live like Victorian nobility. Like they don't really seem to get up. Like they're doing business dealings, but other than that, they don't seem to
Yeah.
get up the much except being the idle rich.
That's absolutely correct. They're doing some investing. They do at one point have to go into London to argue for some other kind of investment business deal that we don't need to know really. They just have a successful trip. So compare that with their Mr. Forrester, who is their partner in the real estate development. That guy also has money, but he's understood by the way he's presented to be less classy. Like
Well, I think the idea is he's supposed to be new money
right.
versus
He
old
wears
money.
a cheesy jacket that's really checkered. He wears a really I don't know if it's intended to be a hairpiece or whatever. He's got his hair on a pompadour with really poorly matched white
If that's not
temples.
intended to be a hairpiece, then they have the worst hair and makeup people of all time. Because that was the worst hairpiece I've ever seen.
You would, if you were the Laniers, you would not invite this guy to your club. That's for sure, because he just doesn't seem to have it together. But he's very nice to his assistant. So he's actually it's interesting that they go to the trouble. Like he's clearly a little bit crooked because the Laniers have employed Mr. Forrester to get this land going that they're developing to sell for real estate. They're clearly kind of relying on some investment money and all of the equipment and all the other things that he owns as part of his business. And he has lied or ignored or various other things to Lon Chaney so that there's he's just running over graveyards.
By the way,
Yeah.
your comments, Julian, I now have another Lava Shark movie, and that movie is Scare Piece.
Love it.
Oh my
man.
God! If we could definitely sell that to Troma or Full Moon.
Scare Piece is a great idea. That is a great idea. Oh my goodness. Yes.
There'll be Scare Piece, there are dash, there'll be hell to pay.
Oh my goodness.
God.
That's one of the best things I ever heard. Oh my God.
You have to do it.
That is so inspired.
How do we pitch this? I guess.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful.
Well, when you're in the pitching room, Jason.
Yes. Oh my God.
Be sure that I don't know. Anyway, sorry to derail things, but
no.
That was worth it.
No, that was well worth it.
Thank you for indulging in my ridiculousness.
No, so this is maybe the first movie I've ever seen where bad stuff happens because they bulldoze a graveyard.
I mean,
Poltergeist
is that's
yeah, but Poltergeist comes out 20 years later.
What I'm saying though, but like, yes, I agree. There's got to be other stuff where people are developing or in and around cemeteries and stuff like that. This is the first one. This is the one I remember though. Actually seeing bulldozers make this happen. And it's just how they're like, well, we gave you time.
Yeah.
Like, this leads also to, I guess, Hitchhiker's Guide, right? Like, well, we told you to move them and you didn't. So sorry about this, but we're just bulldozing all these graves. And let's build something cool over it, right? Like it's so idle rich too, where they're like, well, this is where the graves were, but what if we put this house here? Oh no, let's put this other thing here. Like when they have
the children need a play area. That's the hilarious.
Oh, see, I kind of want the play. I kind of want that. Like
I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the prequel to like Poltergeist or something,
Yeah,
except in a different area.
exactly.
Because she's just like, yeah, we should. Where the graveyard is where the children's play area will be. And I'm like, no, don't put the children's play area by the graveyard. That's
and
horrible.
that doesn't even become anything. Like that
I
that
know.
that
No,
is
it
not
does. It
even the
becomes
plot of this
Poltergeist.
movie.
It becomes Poltergeist.
Correct.
Right.
I would love to see if this trope popped up earlier than this film. I'm sure it has at some point, but boy, it was that's really neat. And it actually, to be honest with you, I know it's just that these are just plaster of Paris gravestones and everything, but it looks completely believable when they're bulldozing those things. You really feel it in your bones. You're like, oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah,
Yes, it
don't
really
do
You know,
that.
is.
say what you will about Lon Chaney not necessarily fitting into the setting. I love him in this opening scene. Like
Oh, yeah, hell yeah.
he looks
Yes.
like somebody that Jack Kirby drew in
Oh
this. Like
yes.
he
Yes.
like is I love, the younger, Lon Chaney that's in the Wolfman films, but there's just something about him at this stage in his life where, like, and I it's sad because some of it was due to his alcoholism, but
Hmm.
he's so craggy and
Yeah.
big, and he's an older man, but he's very physically imposing. Like, he looks like he could fight that bulldozer. And I
Yes.
like I like that they
Yeah.
have decked him out in sort of like an archaic outfit with like the top hat and the Inverness coat and everything with
Yes.
the cane. Like, when they have later on, when they have scenes of him inside, like he literally takes up the entire room. Like, he's so
Isn't that
like
remarkable?
big and imposing in this
I mean,
movie.
Lon he's only 6'2". Okay, he looks like he's
Only 6'2".
well. I mean, 6'2" is not a very unusual height. I mean, it's tall, but it's not. It's
How
not
tall Jason
ridiculously.
is, so he doesn't think it's that weird.
It's how
Yeah.
how tall I am, and I don't
I'm
feel
5'7", Jason.
I don't
Just
feel like
just
I don't feel like I'm as giant as this guy. This guy just magnetically seems. You're right. He seems to be like a piece of the furniture. He is just
well,
and yeah, it's
some
remarkable.
of it is like, he plays it so big. Like, he's always shouting. He's smashing
Yes,
stuff with his cane. Like,
yes.
um
He
Oh,
swings that cane
he's
around.
he's ready to chew iron and spit nails. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
he is
He
not
doesn't
taking
just swing it
anything.
around. He like pushes people around with it. Like he threatens
yeah.
people with it. He's
It
scary
kind of
looking.
gives you an idea of how he like would have played Mr. Hyde had he ever been given the
Yes.
role,
Well
Mhm.
said.
or if he didn't get to play too many heroes in his day. But like, I also think about Professor Challenger from The Lost World. Like, I think that Chaney
Yes.
probably
Oh,
would have
what a
been pretty
great
good in that
idea.
role.
Just to compare this and think about these guys being in a film together. Dean Martin 5'10", but John Wayne 6'4", James Arness, all right, Matt Dillon 6'7", so he would be towering towering over Lon Chaney Jr. at 6'7". That's
Jason
the
is desperately trying to convince us that he's not tall right now.
right. Anyway,
I have been in the same room with you
yeah,
multiple times on multiple occasions, Jason. You may not be an NBA player, but you are above average height.
I didn't bring this up to argue my own height. I just
I look. I'm not saying this like I'm a bona fide short king. Like, I'm okay with my stature. I'm just trying to make you have realistic expectations about how people both view you and Lon Chaney Jr.
that's fascinating. Okay, uh, so I don't even know where to go from that. I so anyway, yes. In Tony's words, he's going to chew iron and spit nails. He is fighting mad, and the Laniers, being the genteel people that they are like, well, gosh, Lon Chaney Jr. seems super mad. Lon Chaney Jr. also has a niece, I suppose, who is that's right. She's
Yeah,
the
she's his
niece,
niece. Mhm.
and her name is Amy, and she is a lovely 60s girl, like complete with 60s eyeshadow and 60s wig and 60s,
Flippy
hip.
hair like Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah, and hip clothes, and she's dating the younger boy of the Laniers, and there are young lovers,
Not
and
Frankie Avalon.
right. When they were on screen, I was thinking a lot about that movie, right? Of Horror House, because it's much the same era. I don't even remember what year that movie was, but it seems very similar to this. I don't know. It's within 5 years, I suppose. Actually, since you mention it, this is 1964. So at this point, Frankie Avalon is still playing Frankie in those surf movies. But that's definitely the era. So because and into this film, now that we've set up these drawing room characters, into it comes the coolest character I have. She is so cool. Um, Vanessa Whitlock, the resurrected witch, played by Yvette Reese. And Drew, would you like to describe to us this lich that 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 comes back?
Um, so she's not super made up. Like she's not wearing monster makeup,
No,
so
in fact,
much.
it's they've done
It's very
something so
simple.
that she seems like it almost seems like the actual actress hasn't drunk water in 2 days because her lips look so dried out.
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know how they
Yeah,
made that did that effect.
she's it's like her skin's on too tight. Like,
Hmm.
like
Exactly.
there's like kind of two types of witches often in movies. There's like scary monstery witches, like which is kind of I guess out of the Wicked Witch stereotype, and then there's like hot witches,
Yeah.
which I guess we kind of had last week in The Craft and the week before in Practical Magic. This woman, she's not a hot witch, but she is striking. Like like with the hood and everything, like just as much as like Lon Chaney Jr. takes over every scene he's in. Like anytime she walks into the room,
Yeah.
like you're gonna look at her. Like, to do the point that Julio is saying, like the closest effect, although he's far more made up than this, to this character, I would say, is when after they kind of take off the bandages on Boris Karloff in the original
Oh
Mummy,
yeah.
he kind of had this like dried out look to
Yes.
him, and she's similar to that. Like
Yeah, it's
it's not.
really good makeup, which is why I
Yeah.
don't think I think the hairpiece was intended to look terrible
It
because the
must
makeup
be.
people obviously know what they're doing.
She's amazing. She reminds me of so much of Barbara Steele.
Yeah. I
From
actually
like,
had to look up and see. The first time I watched this, I was so convinced that was Barbara Steele, and I had to actually like double check that it was not.
yeah.
So
Yeah, she's a lot like her. She has very big eyes like Barbara Steele does, and the gauntness. She's always very, except in rare instances, she's always moving like a ghost. I mean, it
I
because
love it.
this movie stands alone and doesn't have like a big bunch of lore in other movies. They don't have to answer questions. So she moves like a ghost. We
It
don't,
was really funny because when the grandmother is like making her way down the stairs for the first time in 2 decades or whatever it was, because she's got to go try to save somebody. This Vanessa is like sneaking down the stairs behind her and but just patting down very quietly. And I thought, oh, I guess she doesn't want her to notice that she's there. But once she turns around and sees Vanessa, they're, like, looking at each other, she's still moving that way.
yes.
She's still, like, kinda creeping down. I'm like, "No, she can see you now, you can just
It's
walk
such
normal."
a neat she's so it is really weird the way that she moves, and she's the only such wraith in this film, so we don't have anything else to compare her to, she is sui generis, and she just moves strange, and that's awful. There's a weird thing about the plot here because the Whitlocks, as it turns out, are eager to get their revenge on the Laniers for the loss of their ancestral home, and also for disturbing their gravesite. And they're going to take advantage of the help of Vanessa, who has been resurrected after the disturbing of the gravesite. And Vanessa is going to visit their revenge by killing them and or by hypnotizing them into driving off cliffs and so forth. And that the odd thing there is it makes it sound like all of this is a conspiracy, but to be honest with, but it really seems to be more. All of these things are just kind of happening at once. I don't think you're even supposed to really kind of ask about this because instead the movie's kind of wrapped up in the mystery of who is in cahoots with Vanessa coming back and committing these murders. But anyway, it's interesting. And let's talk about the murders a little bit. Tony, the only one I can think of right now involves the car. But do you want to
And
tell
the
us
one, the
how
drowning, and the
how
drowning of
they're?
in the
Yeah,
bathtub.
the drowning is pretty,
Oh yeah, that's
like,
right.
he casts spells on him, pushing him into the bathtub, and that's what
Yeah.
starts everything. Going, hey, we know he's been murdered. This doesn't make any sense. It looks like a murder, but there's no murder weapon around. That's pretty powerful, actually.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
some
they're pretty sure
strong
it was Lon
magic.
Chaney, but then I guess they decide it wasn't.
Yeah,
Well,
well, because he was there, But that's pretty extensive, terrible magic to wield at someone.
yes.
Um,
With her little
and
voodoo
then
dolls.
Yeah, and the fact that there's the dolls that she's placed around that help facilitate this, evidently.
How does the doll thing work? Is it that okay? I'm a witch. I want to. I want the governor of X state that I'm not going to name. I want him to die in a bathtub.
Well, in her
So I
in her
make a
kind of magic,
doll.
she has to have the physical talisman or whatever you want to call it, the physical devil doll, as Helen calls
Yeah,
it, has to be one of them has to be with the person or near the person, and the other one she has. So it's not just a voodoo doll like where you just have the doll. There has to be a corresponding like receiver doll or whatever. And so
that's
you'd
weird,
have
man.
to go to the state where the governor is
Yeah.
and put the doll somewhere on the governor's
So I'd have to deliver a
property, I
doll to the
guess.
governor.
Yeah, or you could probably
So
send it in the mail, I guess.
well,
And then
yeah.
the
I mean,
governor
maybe if I send it as a gift, and so the
yeah, the governor
governor's
opens it and then you can now
assistant,
and
no,
apparently
governor's assistant comes in, says, "Hey,
she has a lot
governor,
of
look, somebody
psychic
sent you a doll."
yeah, yeah. She has a lot of psychic ability because she always knows when they have the doll and what they're doing at the time. Because somehow she knows he's in the bath because she's drowning the doll. She's not strangling it. She's like, oh, he's in the bath now, so I'm going to drown this doll. And so she pushes it on its
These
neck, which
dolls.
I love the specificity of. She didn't just drown the doll. She's pushing its neck with her hands, and Lon Chaney is grabbing his own neck as if he's feeling that he's being pushed
Yeah.
under the
Well,
water.
it
It
wasn't Lon
was
Chaney.
fascinating.
It was Mr.
I mean, no,
Mr.
not Lon
Forrester.
Chaney, right. It was the other guy, the one with the bad hairpiece.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. Forrester. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's fascinating. And if there were sequels to this movie, this became like a universe of films in the Witchcraft group. Then the Witchcraft franchise, we would probably learn more and more about how these dolls work. I love that you have to be holding one and there has to be a receiver doll on the other end somewhere. Doesn't have to be in the room with you. It just has to be in your possession somehow or another. There's all kinds of fun things you could play with. Well, what really counts? Like if it's in my car and somebody else is driving my car, am I still in possession of the devil doll? Does it always work like a spy camera? And could I do espionage using it? I mean, this is I I love the possibilities of these dolls. So that's cool. Uh,
Right, and I'm sorry, I stole you had handed it to Tony and I stole it, so
No,
oh,
apologies.
no. I mean, there's the other ones are mostly vehicular related or attempted vehicular
I don't think that
homicide.
ditch looks like it would actually kill people if they crashed into it. It looks like it's kind of just
Well, I mean, everything's made of metal in those days,
not everybody's got
and not
seatbelts.
everybody's wearing a seatbelt,
they don't have
and
Yeah,
they don't have airbags. Yeah.
airbags.
you can
Yeah, I
kill
mean,
yourself by
there's.
falling into it. Yeah, yeah.
I
Th-
kind of thought something similar, but I don't know. It's possible if you're going at a big, enough of a clip,
yeah.
then yeah.
There
I
is
mean, I
something
just
dumb about it, which is that there are insert shots that are not helpful, and I don't understand why they kept them because they didn't really need them. The insert shots show the car driving down a roadway that looks nothing like the roadway that they're driving down when they actually, because they're supposed to be driving through a big landfill and then
Right.
going into a ditch in the landfill. But when they're inside the car, they're showing them going down a nicely
Down a
manicured
road. Yeah,
road.
that was weird.
Well, I think there's a turn. I think the idea is that they turn from the road to the landfill. If you
Yeah,
look, there's
but
there's
it's
a turn off, but
No,
it
no, no,
is really it's
no,
but
but
confusing though.
continuity-wise, it doesn't work.
yeah,
Yeah, no, no,
continuity
I'm
wise
with
didn't work
you.
because they'll show the car from the angle of the dump or whatever it is,
Right,
and the car is coming toward you on the dirt, and then they'll show from their perspective, and they're still on the road.
So
So
right.
you
No,
could
I
even
got you.
say they had it right, and then they edited it out of order. This weird. It's the only thing in this movie that even comes close
Yeah, it's a
to
strange
being.
choice.
Yeah,
I mean, they show you because they build it up, but they
yeah.
just didn't get the coverage
I think that's
from
right.
the quarry or whatever, the
Yeah.
dump. So, but I mean, there's multiple reasons. Any of that, why that would happen? Like, did they, and then the footage was no good, or did they just not go out and shoot at that? Like,
Or they ran out of money
maybe
and
just
couldn't get
you
those
just don't
shots.
go, you just don't
Something
get the
like that.
coverage because you need to move on. I mean, there's so many reasons why that would happen, but it is a little bizarre that it is that way.
Yep. So anyway, the movie, considering the movie's not very long, it really picks up pace in the second half. Once people start going down to the crypt and we start revealing who all the bad guys are, it moves pretty fast. And I love all of this stuff. I have to say, if I were watching, think about this: if you were watching this movie in 1964, and all these people are wearing, modern clothes and stuff, and then there's the crypt below the house, and there's these spooky tunnels and everything. I am just loving this. It's like the perfect Halloween date night kind of movie.
Well, also, this goes back to kind of a lot of the stuff during Satanic Panic. It's like, no, the real deal people you need to be worried about are not the Heschers and the
the
white
witches,
trash of the world.
the
It's the
Wiccans.
rich people. It's the rich people
Yes.
who have influence, who are really doing all the terrible things and can get away with it all the time.
Yeah.
Like if they catch the metalhead Hesher person or anybody else, anybody outside of that circle is a easy scapegoat, and they're going to go to jail. Whereas all these people can definitely get away with all of it, and they will because they're rich, right? That's how this all works. But we
Although
haven't reached Satanic Panic era yet, but this is how it is.
I am sort of rooting for Lon Chaney Jr. in this movie because his
Yeah, they
family
tore up
No
his
doubt,
family's
no doubt.
graveyard. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
Well, aside
I'm-
from that, they also his family, they're the good, quote unquote good guy family,
Yeah.
jacked his family's house.
Yes,
Yeah,
they did.
Like he has legitimate reasons to be pissed
Sure.
off.
Yeah, if you're gonna witch
Isn't that
some
funny?
people,
Yeah.
if you're gonna throw some sorcery around, this is there's pretty legit reasons to do that.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I like this movie so much is I feel
Right.
like there are some shades of gray going on that kind of remind me of like John Carpenter films in the 80s. Like it's
agree.
not
Yeah.
quite that, but it's a little bit more morally mucky than your average horror film from this time period.
Right.
Like compare this to The Devil Rides Out, which is another cult / witchcraft type movie that comes out a couple of years after that. And I love that movie, but the whole time you know who the good guys are and you know who the bad guys are, and
Yeah.
it's a uncomplicated morality play. Like this even though I called it a morality play in my opening thoughts, like, and to a degree it is, but it does have a little bit more complexity to it, like right down to the fact that you have like the couple that are kind of doing the Romeo and Juliet thing that just know is going to end badly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
That was
and
sad.
yes,
It is sad, but I like that they stuck the landing on it.
Yeah, they
Because
totally did.
yeah.
I think a lot of movies I guess I'm jumping around
They
a
would have,
lot.
No,
yeah,
jump around. That's
they
fine.
would have wussed out and been like, oh, he saves her and they live happily ever after. It's like,
Yeah,
Changes.
no.
she converts to Christianity, and
Yeah, exactly.
they have a big church wedding.
Well, and to
Exactly.
Drew's point, there are subtle clues and not so subtle clues that tell us because of how mean and giant Lon Chaney is compared with how genteel and breakfast eating the Laniers are, that Laniers are the good guys.
Breakfast
But
eating.
with everything that they say, you realize they're good guys, but they're actually kind of shitty, rich douchebags who are used to getting their way. And
Yeah, good
it's
guys in
just
quotes.
Well,
right.
and they might be. This is also kind of a generational thing, like whereas these people that are, oops, excuse me, these people that are the Laniers
Yeah.
now might be okay people, but their family
Right.
from generations ago buried someone alive and stole their house.
Yes,
And
Like
that's right.
didn't even burn her first. They buried her
Right.
alive. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Man.
kind of, it's hard to feel too bad for this. I mean, it makes for a really interesting feud
Yes.
as far as that goes. But yeah, on the one hand, you're supposed to be appalled at the the killings and the sacrifices that we think might happen. On the other hand, you're going, I think, maybe this feud, maybe they kind
Maybe
of
they
deserve it. Like,
yes.
it's hard to feel really too terrible for that family, especially when they're like, "Oh, that's weird," I they're sitting in their house just thinking, that's pretty terrible.
well, I mean, the
The
closest
grandmother's
thing.
been through a lot, but the family, this family is, this family's been through a lot. Like, yeah, but we didn't bury grandma alive and
Right.
steal her house.
The closest thing we see to any kind of reparation or anything like that is that I'm blanking on the character's name, but the head of the family goes to his business partner and he says, no, you're going to give the Whitlocks
Yeah,
more
Bill
time.
Lanier. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, you did
Right.
this without consulting me, and you're going to give the Whitlocks more time. Like, this is, what you're doing is messed up. But other than that, like, he seems completely fine with the idea that he is living in another family's house.
Yes.
And I love this about this movie because it does make everything so goddamn complicated between all
Yes.
these characters. And there is a lot of, considering this movie is so short, because of all this stuff, there is a lot of meat on the bones because of that. Like, as usually, movies that are on the shorter side, they kind of skimp on some of those details, but like this
It's a good point.
really gives you a lot of stuff to sink your teeth into.
Yeah, that's really, really well said because it does. In a way, they have built more backstory than a movie like this needs, and it's all the richer for it. You just love it. You're like,
It
oh yeah,
feels very lived in.
yes. Gosh, I mean, it just makes me happy to watch, and this is another film that probably is in the United States in the public domain that you can just pop up anywhere. You could just play this all the time, and it would look so great with Black Sunday.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so
Tracy follows
Tracy
Amy
follows
down into the
Amy.
crypt and
Yeah.
discovers now, and this sets off sort of the whole run to the end, that there is in fact a robe-wearing bunch of Satanists down there who are chanting amongst uh, torches. And guys, can you please explain to me, did Lon Chaney, are we to understand that he stabs a baby? Is that what is going on?
Oh,
A
I'm pretty
baby
sure
or some kind of
it could be an
animal.
animal, but I think they're saying these people in again what leads to the whole a lot of the satanic panic stuff like this.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we're supposed to believe he stabbed a baby.
yeah,
Like
that's
there's
shocking.
the shape of everything. Like you could go no, it's an animal, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they were getting at was truly terrible behavior.
yes, they sacrifice a baby because they want witchy power. and that is whoa. I mean, it is a shock. It's a shock to see. It'd be more shocking if there were like sounds. They don't give us any
Oh yeah.
this. You can imagine that this was a fight with censors. If that's intended to be a baby, probably they were supposed to have baby crying noise. Nothing like that. Like nothing. It is silent. It's scary. That's a scary moment.
I mean, it is
Anyway,
shocking. I mean, it's shocking as it is. Like, I don't.
yeah,
It
it
it would
is.
throw it into a whole nother realm if they had really gone for it. I mean, it's enough. I think
Yes.
to be fair.
It's shocking. I mean, it lifts the movie into a whole nother level when that happens. So Tracy sees that and screams and screams and
She
screams.
screams when she sees Amy. She doesn't
Yes,
scream when she sees that they're. She doesn't even scream when he stabs whatever he stabs. She only screams when when it's presented the wrapped packet is presented to Amy, and then Amy turns around so that Tracy's able to see her, and then she screams,
that's true.
"Amy!" And she's like, she says something like, "Oh no!" or something. It's very horrible and painful.
And is instantly
And
captured.
then they grab her and they decide, I guess, that they're going to go ahead and sacrifice her or something. So they tie her to
Yes, later. They're
a
going to
stone.
sacrifice her later. For now, they're
Yeah,
going to
they
let
tie
her
her up on a
sort of
stone
steep, if
tablet
you
kind of
will,
thing.
by tying her to a table and leaving her.
Well,
And
they've already got enough power, baby killing
right,
power for the night,
Hmm.
so it's going to be
right,
way more impactful to get somebody from the other family the next time they need a sacrifice.
Yep.
right. So, um,
Even though, well, I guess she's an in-law. Yeah, she's
and by the way,
technically.
these are,
Yeah.
the Whitlocks are in charge. I mean, Lon Chaney and Amy are the Whitlocks here. But later on, when Whitlock,
Oh,
uh,
and by the way, I want to say at that
mhm,
meeting, that
yes,
coven meeting, apparently he does not tell everybody, oh, by the way, Vanessa has been resurrected, you guys. He doesn't tell them that. And then he tells Amy, like later on that night, oh, tomorrow Vanessa will be here. And I'm like, why didn't you tell everybody at the witch meeting? That seems
it's a
like it
good
would have been
point.
a good announcement. I don't know.
To
I,
build
d- I
suspense, he's a showman.
yes.
By the
So
way,
so
yeah,
that
I have
means,
this
as far as
knowledge
they're
that Vanessa's
concerned,
gonna.
yeah, this is their just regular weekly witchy meeting, and they don't
No, no,
even
no.
know.
This
Well,
no,
no,
no, absolutely
it's a
not.
Sabbath.
No,
Like
Yeah,
but
Ah,
it's
it's a
it's
not.
Sabbath.
It's
They're
not.
building
It's
up.
the
They're
day
building
before.
up.
Yeah, yeah, they're building up. Yeah, because it's the day before the Sabbath. Because the
Yeah.
next day is when she's going to come. Is for the Sabbath. Yeah, right.
all right,
Yeah,
well
no,
said.
no, it's just not like you get everybody's coming in from out of town to do. There's four Sabbats. This being one where it's advantageous. The fact that they get the victim they get is like, oh, cool,
Sweet.
great.
Yeah.
We got this we're gonna up our game this year. In addition, I guess every Sabbath may or may not be a baby killing one, but this one has
Yeah.
baby killing and grudge killing. So there you go.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So I find it fascinating that there's a lot of people in this coven who are presumably members of the community, and that is intended to sort of raise, the hair, make the hair stand up on the back of our neck, because it means you could get rid of Lon Chaney and you could get rid of Amy, because you don't trust the Whitlocks. But there's a whole coven out there made up of community members wearing robes who are active in secret and
yeah,
doing,
like he even has the
yeah,
line when he thinks that
when they're going to be
they've
discovered.
been
Yeah.
yeah, he says go back to your homes, take off your robes. And
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
kind of the point that Tony was making, is that you don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
Like there's an anonymity there. They're just out there and up to no good, doing their witchy
Right.
ways.
They're like anonymous wealthy donors screwing it up for the rest of us. And in this case, anonymous members of the upper classes getting witchy power and lording it over the rest of us. Very, very cool. And this is before Rosemary's Baby, by the way, like by like 4 years. So I mean, Rosemary's Baby is going to like hit it out of the park and show that in all new satiric, terrifying ways. But it's pretty cool here. Can somebody remind me, once Tracy is taken captive? Oh, I remember now. The film, it concerns itself for a little bit with, because the Wraith is coming after members of the family. Vanessa, she comes after Grandma. She knocks Grandma down the stairs, and then when Bill comes back from his trip to London, he discovers that his grandmother has been hurt, and so it takes forever for him to get from his grandmother, "Hey, where's my wife? Where'd she go?" And the grandma takes forever to get around to saying, "Oh, she went into."
Well, I mean, to her credit, she had just fallen down the
Yeah,
stairs after seeing a
Yes,
resurrected witch from like hundreds of years ago.
right.
true, for
She was in a
sure.
little bit of shock.
Yes, but it is funny. It's really because he's like, "Yeah, but where
I'm
is
like,
she?"
just
And
say
she's,
crypt, say crypt, say crypt, just say crypt.
"Say the word crypt." That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Instead, she's like, "We buried her alive. The sins of the
We should
blood."
have
Blah, blah, blah."
burned her. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I go, "Oh, she went in the crypt." Okay, all right, she went in the crypt, and we learned some neat stuff, which is that the crypt, which is across the, across the grounds from the ancestral home, the crypt has tunnels down, and then basically you have a crypt, and then you have a tunnel down, and you have more tunnels, and then you have a place for doing masses because it was built during the persecution of the Catholics, and so there was a place for Catholics to do their masses, which the Satanists have taken over. And then and presumably there are tunnels leading all the way back to the house. Although in this movie, I think everybody always runs out the one way, so nobody ever bothers to open up the tunnels back to the
Yeah,
house.
maybe those doors have been, like
There's a
welded
couple
shut.
of cool things here. Number one,
There's a
I,
reason why we have OSHA requirements and the exit
yes,
signs that are clearly marked.
those those
Do you
tunnels are
think the
blocked.
OSHA requirements include that you have to have like all these lit torches that lead the way to
Yes,
the room?
I
one
mean,
every six
in
and a
lieu
half
of
feet. Yeah.
like it's preferred that you have exit signs clearly marked, but
You have to
but in a
have
pinch, I guess torches will
Torches will
do.
do.
you have to have a torch roughly the length of a Lon Chaney Jr. Just every every Lon Chaney, you have to have a
So
torch.
7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And the so but what I thought was interesting is that there's wine down there too. So this is a weird jumble. And I was
Jason and I
thinking
were
to Julia,
fantasizing that the during parties they send the servants to go get wine below the crypts.
it's like we're out of Burgundy. Would you please go to the crypt? Go
Move the big
move a
move the
pew out
big
of the way.
thing.
Go down. You'll find the Burgundy on the
Light some
left.
torches. The torches might already be lit, but if they're not, light some torches.
Yeah, that's
If
such
they
a
are
funny.
lit, just ignore the chanting.
By the
Mhm.
way, this portions of that you can see are exactly the place where the crypt from Dracula, when Peter Cushing in 1957 Dracula goes down and disturbs the coffins and lays the crosses and all that stuff. Dracula comes back from his nightly running around, and he like pokes his head down through the little door and goes, "Ah, damn it, Cushing!" And then they fight. I mean, he runs away and they fight upstairs. But this is the same. You're seeing some of the same sets, and that's kind of fun to spot. So that was actual quote from 1957's Dracula. Is, "Ah, damn
Oh, damn it.
it, Cushing." All right. So, by the way, Julia and I actually stayed at this hotel, and it was so cool.
Although we
Like
didn't, this is a mistake that we have made not once, not
correct.
twice. I don't even think it's 3 times. I think it might have been 4 times at this point, where
I
we
do not
keep
accept that it is four
forgetting.
times.
It's
It's a,
3 times at least. We keep forgetting when we stay at historic places to ask to stay in the actual historic building, and they keep putting us in the more recently built adjacent buildings. And I'm like, oh my god, you would think we would have learned this lesson the first two
yeah,
times.
yeah. No, you're right. You're exactly right.
'Cause that was one of the places where we got to hang out in there and eat and stuff in that main area,
Right,
but
because
they
that's where
stuck
the
us in the
bar
more
is,
more
and
recently
if
built hotel part.
you're hanging out reading at night, you're there in amongst these places where Peter Cushing is like usually in his little library and stuff
You're
like
having
that.
your tea in the morning, and it's really nice, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's because it's a big hotel, so they've built much newer wings, and if you don't ask to be in the castle, then they'll stick you in the which are
Well, I
nice
think
rooms, by the way.
you
So
probably have to book the castle, like, way earlier than we actually booked.
we can presume.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, Julia, for some great event, we got to get back there and do it. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly. So okay,
Who's gonna sponsor our 666th episode?
yes,
That's what
Oh
we
my
have to figure
god.
out.
We should totally, well, 666, we should go to Transylvania.
No, but I love the
I
idea of
mean,
going to Oakley Court. Like all of us staying at Oakley Court, that would kick
that's
ass.
I'm just saying that there's got to be a sponsor somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Somewhere.
right. That's a
Maybe by the time
wonderful.
we're at
You know,
6 we'll be like really famous.
I'm famous on the internet.
Can you
There
get
you
a
go.
sponsorship for us?
We'll see.
What were your thoughts? You were going to say something. You said something.
Did I? I just
Yes.
made a glib remark, I thought.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm famous on the internet. Was the
Oh,
comment.
well, there we go.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a big deal. All right.
Big deal.
I've been not any podcast awards though, so maybe that's the key. We need to get up for a podcast award if there is such a thing.
I've
There are, yeah.
never chased after anything like that, and maybe we should. Maybe it's.
Yeah, isn't it called?
possible.
Is that the Webby or is that something different?
I have no idea. I have not
It's the Webby.
pursued podcast award.
Yeah.
Being able to spend time with you guys has been its own reward, and I literally have not pursued. I'm too lazy, frankly. I think is probably the truth. I'm
Oh, you're too busy. You're too busy
too-
with your
Yeah,
other.
everybody. I mean, everybody. I'm certainly I like the scrappy indie nature of what we do in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. So.
But I know there's a podcast award because, like, the first year that the Smart List was doing their thing, Sean Hayes got nominated for best host of the podcast, but not the other two. So they made fun of him for like the next year and a half about how it was like, well, Sean Hayes is an award-winning podcast host or whatever. Like every
Yes.
time he would come on, it was very funny.
All right. So anyway, we have this final fight during the mass, and I think the really shocking moment, almost up there with baby stabbing, is when Amy semi turns on Vanessa, and there is no escape. It is really, really shocking.
Well, Amy is definitely she's like she's like the Scientology people or any of those people who's just kind of a prisoner of the cult.
Yeah.
She clearly feels like she doesn't want to be there, but she can't not be there. Because her uncle is controlling her.
Also kind of internal to the family, right? Like there's a blood lineage there as well. But I think I kind of got the impression, this is maybe just me reading into it, that up until a point, it's a very much kind of thrall-like thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's supposed to be more of a twist of like, nah, she's been going along with it. It's totally, she's in on it.
Yeah.
I felt that way by the end, that it's some of that, but also, you know what? This is where I'm going. If I could keep it a secret from my fiance, cool, in the gang, but since that's not going to happen, I'm leaning in on it.
Yeah, you're right. There are differences sometimes from scene to scene, and this is not a complaint. Like, I think she's inconsistent. I think she waffles a little bit. I think she's an eager part of her cult, but I think she's in a relationship that she really believes in.
I do think also some of that comes from abuse. Like, I think,
I don't go with you there.
Like, I don't think that she's super about stabbing babies and resurrected witch queens and things like that. I think that this is the only life she's known. So which makes it even more both sad but also a brave choice that he does not rescue her. Like, she is doomed. And I love that the movie makes this choice. I think that's really brave because, and it's really horrific. This is a horror movie, and it's not a completely unhappy ending, but it's definitely like a bittersweet ending because he doesn't get to rescue her, but the family is still together, but like he has to watch his fiance get burned alive. And
crazy. Yes.
It's, again, it kind of reminds me of something that John Carpenter would do. Like, there's that sort of cynical edge to this that reminds me of later films. And
much more so than say Hammer. One gets the
yeah.
impression that the young lovers would survive in a Hammer
Oh,
movie, you know?
definitely. He would swoop in there and pull her out of the fire, and we would see Lon Chaney Jr. and Vanessa get burned, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Um
Well, I think it's interesting that we almost do get that, and he realized like there's no way I can get in there. Like he
Yes.
goes,
Yeah,
and
that
then it's like the
fire was
heat drives him back, and he just
terrifying.
goes, "Whoop!" I
It was
guess.
really scary. That was really worried about those the stunt people in that
Actors, yeah.
in that fire.
well,
Yeah.
apparently
Actors
they
and
really let a house on fire to film that
yeah. Well,
scene.
that's when
Wow.
that's when they're just watching from the outside and the house burning. But I'm talking about that room that they're all in. It looks. I mean, I
Yeah.
know that they have some controlled fire, but it looked really hot and scary.
Yeah. Well, he
Yeah.
goes. I mean, he's trying, and then he just realizes like, well, gotta let my witchcraft bride to be go. You just sometimes you gotta let it happen. I mean, he's
Yeah.
trying though. It's even throughout all of it, he does make one last attempt, and just it's too late. That's again, like you're talking about, Drew. The choices they made
Yeah.
were pretty striking in a lot of ways. And this is again why I go back to, you don't have to have a lot of gore to make
Yeah.
something truly horrific.
That's right.
It's there's not, it's okay to have gore. It's that makes There's some great gory horror movies, but this is another case of it's suitably tragic and horrific throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. That is. Oh, and by the way, they lose their house as well, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, the family
Thankfully, it's not
loses.
Oakley Court that burns down because clearly that's a differently shaped house.
It,
But still,
yeah, they burned down an actual house. It's not Oakley Court, but it's understood to be the same house that they've been living in. Which, by the way, how I w- if you I know that we would be thankful to save our own lives, but if your house burns down, all your stuff burns. Like that's a big deal. Like all of your stuff,
no, it's
like
horrible.
it is
Yeah.
Absolutely
it's a
horrible.
shock. It's so to some extent they are punished, probably cosmically justly, that they stole this house from the Whitlocks, and now the Whitlocks have been destroyed, but also the house that they stole from the Whitlocks have been destroyed.
I
But
love we didn't talk about this from at the beginning of the movie, but I love that at the beginning, right after they tear up the cemetery, Bill goes out there and just grabs up the part of the tomb of the witch that
yeah,
has the symbol on it, and he brings it in and he compares it to this stone that's next to the fireplace that has the same symbol on it, and he's talking to Helen and he's like, so this is that symbol's the same, and then she's like, oh yeah, that's the symbol of the witch or whatever, and then she finds out that he brought it, like he took it off the thing. She's like, oh my god, it was really really
yes,
great, just the whole
Right.
thing of like, not only did we steal their house, but now I'm like and we tore up their tombs, and now we're desecrating like we took part of the tomb and back to the house. It's just all the bad things that they've done.
It's like all the stuff you see lately where we get all these reports and photos of like, here's this disturbed tomb with a sword, and here's this other one with this magically preserved
yeah,
features, and everybody's like, don't take the sword, or don't remove
right.
this, or don't
I'll tell
don't
you,
mess with the
like,
black slime. Like, just can we
absolutely.
just
There's
stop
so many things that
that?
are in museums that you're like, I can't believe that somebody took that out of
But
something.
it
Like we just went to a museum the other day where there was like a exhibition of like how different countries and times have dealt with dead people, and it's like, here's a bunch of stuff that this person was buried with, and I'm like, why did you take it out? Like, I just feel terrible that they took all this
Yeah.
stuff off of the bodies of these dead. Oh my god, I just
yes.
hate it.
But and to
Totally.
Tony's point, I have seen recently. It's like, hey, look, we uncovered this strange grave in Eastern Europe, and this
Yeah,
skeleton has a
went ahead and pulled
sword
this
poked through
we
its
went ahead and pulled
ribs.
this wooden stake out
Yeah.
of this
Right.
guy's
Or
chest.
like a orb, and everybody's
Yeah.
like, don't remove the orb. You what
Like,
what do we have to do to get you, like, look at the world? Do we also need you just stop? Do not remove the orb or the sword or the stake or the black ooze. Don't, none of that.
any
Just leave
like
it. Just leave it.
it's so
And
funny. I have no belief in a spirit world, and yet even I know not to mess with mystical looking hoodoo. That's like
well,
very
it's
You have a
it's
little bit
like
of
when we
belief.
were
A
talking
little bit of
about
belief.
satanic Hispanics, and almost everybody, whether they believed or not, were like, yeah, look, man, I'm not
yeah,
messing with the witch market.
right.
I'm not, I don't do these things. You just don't do just
Yeah.
in case. and
Right.
every filmmaker from that Fantastic Fest it was the universal theme. There were a lot of them like, yeah, I don't do X, Y, and Z, or I don't go to these places.
Yeah.
It like I yeah, in day to day, I don't worry about that. But just in case, and I have friends and family who I've seen, there's weird stuff that's happened, and I'm just not gonna touch it. Was the
Right.
common theme, and that's kind of how I operate. Like I'll do this. Like no, you know what, man, I'm not going to the abandoned asylum and bringing a Ouija board. But you
Right.
can.
No.
That's fine. You
Yeah.
can you go have fun, my friend. But me personally, that's yeah, probably nothing's gonna happen. But boy, I don't want to find out. I've seen enough movies, right?
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't think of it that way, but I have.
Born in evil and died in evil. That's what they say. It is.
I
That's the
mean,
case.
it did
And
affect me when I went swimming in in a cave when we went to
wow, where did you go swimming in
Mexico.
a cave? Oh, really?
Uh,
Cool.
yeah, down, we took a vacation a couple years ago, but I kept just thinking, like, I know there's nothing down here, but if there were, this would be the place. This would be where the thing grabs you.
uh, all right. So that brings us to the end. Before we get to our final thoughts, I just wanted to point out that for the listener, if you haven't just watched this movie, or if you're thinking of it, or if it's been a long time, there are so many great like shots, basically, like really
Mhm.
great compositions in this film, where with the staging of two characters, the appearance of one character in the background, or just any number.
Oh, the
There are
shadows. Like
yes,
when she's talking on the phone, and there's the shadow on behind her on the wall behind her of Amy coming down the stairs, but you don't ever see
yes,
Amy. You see her shadow. All
It
there's just so many beautiful things like that.
the
yeah,
Also the score, it really, like, I think if you are a fan of like Dark Shadows
yes,
and you haven't seen this, I think you will also enjoy it. Just it feels like it could be Dark Shadows adjacent in many ways. Just the
yeah,
way the score and everything, how it's put together, the family drama. It's of course compartmentalized, but it has a flavor that I think fans of both, you'll be a fan of both, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. Well said. It's a beautiful house as presented in this film. I just love to look at this thing. It's just a wonderful piece. Okay, let's get our final thoughts, and then we'll get to any endorsements that we might have. So it was Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go Tony. Witchcraft 1964.
Yeah, I'm really glad we picked this one. Thanks to streaming there's a lot of
Yeah, no
ups and
kidding.
downs to streaming these days. And sometimes it seems like more downs than ups. But the fact that you can kind of find this across there is pretty cool. It wouldn't be something I'm sure, I've done those things where Amazon, for example, just recommends you stuff. Tubi does the same. So I might have found it, but I'm glad Drew brought it to us because I think it fits in with our retrospective, and I think it's got a lot of really cool stuff in it.
Wonderful, thank you. Julia, what about you?
I'm sorry. Did you say the final thoughts or endorsements? I forgot that we.
Final thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Yeah. No. I think it's gorgeous. Just really neat to look at. Really, and it's not. I mean, it didn't take 1,000,000 years or $1,000,000. Well, I don't know if it took $1,000,000. But the point is, it was not super expensive or super complicated for them to film. It's mostly just practical stuff, but it's great. I mean, it's really, really just looks fantastic. And I love the performances. I like the story. It's not the most original creative thing in the whole world. We've seen kind of this story in different iterations, but it's done well and it's suspenseful. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Wonderful, thank you, Drew.
What a great movie to sort of unearth,
Mm,
and I am excited that we talked about it, and that everybody dug it. I hope the people who listen to our podcast, I hope they make a point to go out and check this movie out because it is a terrific, again, sort of an unsung gem. It's just a really good flick.
very cool. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this to us.
No, you're welcome. My
I
pleasure.
don't know what we're gonna follow up with, but this sets a good tone. Like we can kind of reach for stuff that'll just be fun to spend time with. So, Tony, I have a thought. We haven't discussed this. but do you remember you and I did a lean back episode about The Witch, the 1969 movie?
Hmm.
Do you think that would be good to like foist on the rest of the group, or do you think that one lean
I
back
mean, I think
episode is
we
good enough?
already covered it. I mean,
Yeah,
I like that idea of possibly bringing stuff back, but there's a lot of stuff out. I'll go with what's out in my endorsements, but
yeah,
there's a lot to see that
yeah. You're
people are
right. We should.
releasing
We
for
should.
spooky season. So
That's true.
I think that's a cool idea, but I think there's a lot out there that would
Yeah,
be cool
you're right.
to
We should hit on
watch.
something that none of all four of us have already talked about. Okay, yeah, good thought. Cool. Well, then endorsements. Tony, what do you got for us?
Well, I have a couple of new things. The first one is out in theaters, and I think it's coming to Shutter. But lately anything I can see in the theater, if I feel safe enough, I try to go. So, When Evil Lurks, by the director of Terrified. Again, not to be confused with Terrifier. Terrified from Argentina that doesn't have clowns. Not no knock to people if you love Terrifier, but this is not it. Anyway, his new movie When Evil Lurks is really brutal. I think if the amount of child endangerment in it is probably not for everyone, and but he's so good at building tension. Also, if there are parents who have autistic children, there is an autistic child in it. He's like part of the kind of tension and trauma. So beware. I know a lot of people who are just like, you got to see it. It's so brutal, blah, blah, blah. But I try to be cognizant of people's, where people feel comfortable in their horror, I guess. Maybe it's supposed to make you, I'm not sure if it's supposed to make you uncomfortable is where I go exactly, because I don't always ascribe to that. But I think it's really effective, and I really want to do it for the podcast if people are cool with it. But it's in theaters right now, which is select theaters. When Evil Lurks. So I thought it was one of my favorites, and definitely unsettling. If you've seen Terrified, you kind of know what Damien Rugna is about, right? Like, it's a deeply unsettling, bleak affair, but there's some amazing bits in this new one, When Evil Lurks. Also, on Amazon Prime, I kind of want to do this for all. I kind of want to cover this one. I'm going to suggest it for next week, and we'll see. It's totally killer. So if you like Scream and you like Back to the Future, there's a possibility that you will like this movie. I've seen a few people I know, it's always one of those things. You see it at a festival, you see it with a crowd who's primed to see this. It was closing night movie at Fantastic Fest. And When Evil Lurks, by the way, was also at Fantastic Fest. I think I talked about it. But so Totally Killer closed out the festival. So there's that kind of rah, rah, rah. Like, I've seen it with my peeps and we're all into it. And so there's a danger that it won't feel the same way just seeing it in like a Cineplex, or seeing it in your
I
home
think that
if
movie's
you're
going to deliver. I can't wait.
but I actually really enjoyed it. I hope that we can do that one, because it's again, if you like, it's the elevator pitch. I'm sure it would be something akin to Back to the Future meets Scream.
Love it.
And so I found it really fun. It's on Prime right now, so if you want to pre-game it, if we do end up doing it, I just checked and it seems to be there. So I had forgotten when I initially was recovering from Fantastic Fest that it was out. So yeah,
Very cool.
I think it's really cool. I lots of actors that you may recognize doing fun stuff, and I kind of like it. Yes, it is has kills and stuff, but there's a lot of fun in that, in the same way that kind of that mix of horror and comedy is pretty good. It's not, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a pure horror comedy, but it's got enough in there to kind of balance things out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Julia, do you have anything to endorse?
I have two things. One is we just watched Haunted Mansion streaming, and we thought it was delightful and cute and funny and enjoyable. And I don't know
Oh,
why it didn't get a better like more attention when it was in the theater. But what were you gonna say, Tony?
yeah, we just watched that too.
Yeah.
Just before the podcast, actually.
Yeah,
Put on
same.
put on the
Same.
projector and
That's so
let it
funny.
ride. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
cool.
we watched half of it last night and the other half today. But anyway, so I thought that we thought that was a really fun movie. But I was gonna say also, about a dozen years ago, I ran for school board in a district called Grapevine Colleyville ISD in Texas. I did not get on. I was a teachers union lawyer, and they didn't like the looks of me, I guess it would be. But anyway, so now this past week, NBC has started airing a podcast about Grapevine and the things that have transpired since we left there a dozen years ago. Well, 10 years ago is when we moved away. But basically in the last couple of years, what's been going on with them. And so it's really interesting podcast. The first 2 episodes of 6 have already been, uploaded or whatever you call it when a podcast airs. And so yeah, I recommend it. It's very interesting look at basically just kind of what's going on in school districts really around the country, but particularly in Texas. And anyway, it's just very interesting.
Yeah, it
Yep.
is. It is shocking. Drew, what about you?
So I have opposite ends of the spectrum of TV horror. I really enjoy Fright Crew, that's crew with a K and an extra E, and that's on Hulu and Peacock. It's a animated show that I would solidly call what a lot of people term beginner horror. It's definitely shades of Buffy and shades of Monster Squad. It's about a group of teens who live in New Orleans and get empowered by the Loa to fight a demon that has been set free after being imprisoned by Marie Laveau a while back, back in the day. And it's not only got Halloween vibes to spare, but New Orleans is one of my favorite cities in the country, if not my favorite city. And this makes use of a lot of New Orleans folklore and just kind of people's conceptions of New Orleans in really fun ways. And if you're both an animation fan and a horror fan, I think you'll get some enjoyment out of it. But also, if you have kids that you would like to introduce to horror, this show would be a great way to do it, because it doesn't talk down to kids. Like, the scary stuff is scary and the monsters are monsters, but it's not as intense as, say, the thing that I'm about to recommend. But really, really, really solid. Oddly enough, Eli Roth, who I don't always like, is one of the executive producers on it, but I loved this and inhaled it in an afternoon. I really hope it gets a second season, because I just think it's terrific. And I think, also, your fans, if I haven't convinced you with this other stuff, I'll go back to the Buffy comparison. If you are missing Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we don't need a Buffy reboot. This show is a better version of Buffy. So just watch this. We don't need a new version of something that was already good, back in the day. You can watch this, get similar vibes, and you can watch it with your kids. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, on what I would call extreme horror, is 30 Coins, which is on Max. It is a Spanish show. And it's kind of what I would call the X-Files if it was conceived by Clive Barker. It is so bonkers and so twisted, and the monsters are so bizarre. They look like something that has escaped from the John Carpenter version of The Thing. It's just so, when the show started, I thought it's about this priest that is sent to this town where strange things are happening. A cow gives birth to a human baby. And I thought, watching it might be more of a slow burn kind of horror. No, this is the sort of thing where it grabs you by the throat and it shows you something that is going to fuck you up every episode. Like, so it's not for necessarily everybody, but it is great if you are willing to endure some very disturbing images, because it's terrific cast, great use of the locales in Spain. Like, it makes me miss Spain so much from the time that I spent there, but also like terrific creature effects, terrific acting, terrific music. Everything about it is top notch, and it's created by the guy that did Day of the Beast and Witching and Bitching, and I can't remember the director's name, but those are both movies that I know Tony was a fan of. Witching and Bitching, and so am I, and also Day of the Beast is a genuine cult classic. So it's got a horror pedigree to it if you're into Euro horror. So really, really good stuff on both ends. Something to watch with the whole family, something maybe just to watch yourself.
I just looked it up, and it's Alex de la Iglesia. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was
Awesome
waiting
show.
for somebody to recommend that, so that's cool. They actually showed some of the episodes at Fantastic Fest as well.
Cool.
It's so good and so gnarly and so weird and evocative of the X-Files, but goes in places that the X-Files would have never dared to go. It's so twisted and I love it. So I got my more innocent horror love out, my monster kid love out, and I got the part of me that likes gore and violence and cynicism out. So like it's again, something for everybody on my recommendations, I guess.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I don't have I don't have anything beyond Haunted Mansion because I'm so sorry. I haven't been watching anything. I've just been trying to hit some deadlines. So I will I will surf along with Julia's.
You could recommend the Monster Kids books that you have.
I'll save that one for next week.
Kids.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
That's a really, really good idea. Everybody go back and watch Werewolf by Night again, because Drew was tweeting about that earlier, and I think
I need a sequel to Werewolf by Night. Kevin Feige, if you
happen to be listening to this podcast,
happen to be listening to this, which is probably not very likely, but if you do, stop whatever you're doing. Like, we don't need any other MCU stuff except two
Loki's
things.
good. I like Loki.
No, fuck Loki. Werewolf by Night. Werewolf by Night. More Werewolf by
We're getting
Night.
Loki now, though. So Werewolf by Night.
I want the budget for Loki to make more monsters. I don't care about Loki anymore. I'm Team Werewolf by Night.
Sweet.
I'm going back and endorsing Loki season 2 since.
Okay, excellent.
I'm gonna get doxxed on Twitter for that. I actually haven't even seen Loki season 2, so I'm
it's just only the first episode, but
it's only a single episode so far.
I'm stirring the pot, is what I'm doing.
I just also want to mention we're very thankful that the WGA strike has ended, but our friends in SAG-AFTRA are still on strike, and they are continuing.
Actually, I take that back. First of all, give the actors what they want, because the other MCU thing I care about is the Fantastic Four movie, which apparently they can announce the cast when the strike is over. So end the strike for 2 reasons.
Yes. I have high hopes about the strike being over pretty soon, because they've been in the middle of negotiations. The parties are making waving noises, about how it seems to be going the right way. So they're going to continue negotiating this week, and I'm sure that everybody will be back at work soon. But.
And before you dismiss us, I just want to say I'm thinking about Israel, because what a nightmare that they're going through right now.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Everybody be kind to one another. Come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you recommend. And if you've been to Oakley Court recently, let us know, because we love hearing about it. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.